The night was cold, and the little house seemed colder still. In the far corner of a dim room sat a girl no older than 15, her knees pulled tightly to her chest as if she could make herself smaller, quieter, less noticeable. Her dress was torn in places, the fabric worn thin from too many days of use and too few moments of care. The faint sound of the family dog barking outside reached her ears, and she almost envied it. At least it had a bowl of food and a blanket to keep warm. She, on the other hand, hadn't eaten since yesterday and knew better than to ask. Every sound in the house made her flinch. A heavy step. A door creaking. A muttered curse. She had learned early that silence was safer, that drawing attention only led to cruel words or worse. And yet, despite her efforts to disappear, she carried within her a quiet hope that one day someone might notice, not her mistakes, not her silence, but her. Sometimes she pressed her hand against the cracked windowpane, staring out into the night as if the stars might send her a sign that life could be different. She imagined a place where warmth wasn't just a memory, where kindness wasn't a foreign language. But as the cold crept deeper into her bones, reality pressed down harder, whispering the same lies she had heard for years: you are worth less than nothing. And still, in the shadows, her heart kept beating, refusing to give up. Rain poured steadily, blurring the glow of the streetlights and soaking the cracked sidewalks. The girl walked with her head down, clutching the thin jacket around her shoulders as if it could shield her from the chill. Her shoes were worn through at the soles, each step a reminder of how far she had wandered from the place she was supposed to call home. The storm water pooled around her ankles, but she didn't turn back. There was nothing waiting for her behind those walls but more pain. A sudden beam of headlights cut through the darkness. A sleek black car slowed to a stop beside her. She froze, unsure whether to run or stay, her heart hammering with fear. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He looked like someone from another world, his suit pressed, his shoes polished, his presence commanding, but his eyes carried something unexpected: concern. "Are you all right?" he asked gently, his voice steady but warm. The girl instinctively pulled her jacket tighter, trying to hide the bruises peeking out from her sleeves. She shook her head quickly, afraid to speak, afraid of what kindness might cost her. The man didn't push, didn't frown, didn't look away the way so many others had. Instead, he held out an umbrella, shielding her from the rain. For the first time in her life, someone saw her, not as a burden, not as an invisible shadow, but as a human being who mattered. And in that moment, her world shifted, if only by a fraction. The girl sat stiffly on the edge of a chair, her eyes darting around the spacious room as though every corner might hide a trap. The warmth of the fireplace flickered against her face, but she couldn't bring herself to relax. Kindness was foreign to her, it had always come with strings, with conditions that cut deeper than cruelty itself. So when the man placed a plate of food in front of her, she hesitated, staring at it as if it were a trick. "Eat," he said softly, his tone calm, almost fatherly. "You're safe here." Her stomach twisted painfully at the smell of the warm bread, but her hands shook as she reached for it. When the first bite touched her tongue, tears threatened to spill. She couldn't remember the last time food had tasted so simple and so good. Days passed, and the man never raised his voice, never asked for anything in return. He gave her a room with clean sheets, clothes that fit, and silence that wasn't heavy with fear. At first, she remained guarded, certain the kindness would vanish if she slipped up. But slowly, with each gentle word and patient smile, her defenses began to soften. One morning, she caught herself laughing at a small joke he made. The sound startled her, it had been years since laughter had escaped her lips. It was in that fleeting moment she realized something was changing inside her, the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she belonged. The evening was quiet, the kind of quiet that once would have frightened her but now felt strangely comforting. She sat at the long dining table, a plate half empty before her, while across from her the man watched with a calm expression. There was no judgment in his gaze, only a steady presence that seemed to anchor her trembling world. She lowered her eyes, unsure why someone of his stature would bother with a girl like her. After a pause, his voice broke the silence, firm but gentle. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." She looked up, startled, her heart quickening. He leaned forward slightly, his expression unwavering. "From this day forward, you'll never be alone. I'll protect you, always." The word struck her like a sudden light cutting through years of darkness. For so long, promises had been empty things, spoken only to be broken. But in his voice, she heard something different, conviction. Her chest tightened, and before she could stop herself, tears spilled down her cheeks. She pressed a hand over her mouth, ashamed of her own weakness, but he didn't look away. He didn't flinch at her brokenness. For the first time, she believed that someone truly meant it. The vow wasn't grand or dramatic, but it carried the weight of safety, of permanence, of love she never thought she deserved. And in that moment, the chains of fear that had bound her for years began to loosen, setting her heart free. The seasons changed, and with them, so did the girl. The hollow look in her eyes slowly gave way to a brightness that no one thought possible. Where once she walked with her shoulders hunched, trying to disappear, now she held her head higher, her step steady with quiet confidence. She spent her mornings studying, eager to learn, and her afternoons filled with laughter that echoed through the halls of the home that had once felt too grand for her to enter. The man kept his promise. He stood beside her at every turn, not as someone who pitied her, but as someone who believed in her. He encouraged her dreams, celebrated her victories, and reminded her that her scars did not define her. And though he was a man of great power, it wasn't his wealth that changed her life, it was his unwavering kindness, the simple act of seeing her worth when no one else had. One evening, as they watched the sun sink into the horizon, she whispered, almost to herself, "I never thought I could be this happy." He glanced at her, a small smile tugging at his lips, and said, "This is only the beginning." In that moment, she understood that her story was no longer one of survival, but of transformation. She was no longer the girl who lived worse than a dog, she was someone cherished, someone free, someone ready to embrace life. And her journey stood as proof, a single act of compassion can change everything.